Birmingham. Those of you staying overnight in London, catch the vibe.
Barry G, you've just made your first mistake of the evening. You should not have drawn the Under Me Slang Tang rhythm, because I have 8 answer versions lined up. I'm not going to lick them all to your head tonight. I'm going to hurt you with them for now and 2 o'clock. But the first version of the Under Me Slang Tang rhythm, which you've just drawn, comes from Rodigan out of the King Jammy stable. Lincoln Granulated Sugar Minot.
Dash it for Radigan, dash it for.
Over jail and get no bail. War and crime, blowing you till you mind. Alright, whoops the top right in the street. Whoops the top right in the street.
Ceasefire, Radigan, ceasefire.
The late 90s. The rave was reviving off to the sounds of UK garage and two-step. At this point, UK garage had become mainstream, being played in all our commercial clubs. At the same time, producers wanted to experiment, taking dubs of current UK two-step tracks and incorporating different styles and sounds. This would take UK garage and move into different set paths. Little at a time did the producers know that this experimentation will lead them onto a genre, a dark genre that will grow, not only nationally within the UK, but become big worldwide. This is the sound of dubstep. But this musical journey goes way back, starting in Jamaica. 1930s Jamaica. A religious and social movement was growing known as Rastafari. This is due to a prophecy from a Jamaican black rights campaigner named Marcus Garvey. In the 1920s, he stated, "Look to Africa when a black king shall be crowned, for the day of deliverance is at hand." Thus followed the crowning of Haile Selassie, also known as Rastafari Makonnen, becoming the last emperor of Ethiopia. In the Amharic language, Ras means head or king and Tafari means creator. Many saw this as a sign that the prophecy had come true. To celebrate and commemorate the important date significant to the Rastafari movement, a Nyabingi is held in order to engage in worship and praise. This drumming rhythm. The drumming rhythm used in these gatherings are influenced from West Africa called Buru. But within Rastafari, this heartbeat drumming is known as the Nyabingi rhythm, and therefore will become the foundation of current Jamaican music.
The 1-2 heartbeat there, that's where, reggae really comes from.
It's the beginning of the music, because the bingy, the Nyabingi harder, is where all of the music comes from. What them call heartbeats, they tuk-ku, tuk-ku, tuk-ku. Them I play Nyabingi right there, so now you can go there. So that's where the whole thing come from.
World War I and II demonstrated what happens when nations unite against tyranny. This included countries of the British Commonwealth. Besides Canada, Australia and New Zealand, we also had fighters from India, Africa and the West Indies. Following the outbreak of the Great Wars, over 25,000 British West Indians volunteered to serve. This willingness stemmed from loyalty to the British Empire. This was also the same in the Second World War, recruiting over thousands for the Royal Air Force, Merchant Navy and the Women's Auxiliary Air Force.
Well, it's a job to know where to start. There are so many of us doing so many different things. In the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, in Air Sea Rescue and the Marines. In the RENs, the ATS, the WAF and the nursing services. If I could navigate you on a magic carpet, we'd find West Indians at their stations all over the country, and in lots of other places which I'm not allowed to mention.
Both of these tragic wars together cost us the lives of over 1 million British military personnel and nearly 70,000 British civilians. Within this total, thousands of West Indian servicemen had lost their lives either through battle, sickness, or were missing in action during the wars. After World War II, the UK encountered mass immigration from the British Empire for settlement, work, and the development of the nation. This included migrants from the Caribbean known as the Windrush generation.
The Empire Windrush brings to Britain 500 Jamaicans. Many are ex-servicemen who know England. They served this country well. In Jamaica, they couldn't find work. Discouraged but full of hope, they sailed for Britain. Citizens of the British Empire coming to the mother country with good intent.
Besides bringing dreams of prosperity, they brought style, culture, and new sounds. Many sounds, such as Mento from Jamaica, Bena from Antigua, and Calypso from Trinidad and Tobago.
The spokesman sings his thanks to Britain.
Now, may I ask you your name?
Lord Kitchener.
Lord Kitchener. Now, I'm told that you are really the king of Calypso singers, is that right?
Yes, that's
well, now, will you
true.
sing for us?
Right now.
Yes.
London is the place for me. London, this lovely city. You can go to France or America, India, Asia or Australia, but you must come back to London City.
To live in London you are really comfortable, because the English people are very much sociable.
Back in Jamaica, jazz and soul started to become a big influence in their music, and with that came R&B from the US.
At the time it was rhythm and blues. Well, Jamaica plays most American stations. They couldn't pick up English station because we're near America. So all the music we're hearing all the time was always American music.
This is because following World War II, many Jamaicans regularly travelled into southern states of the US on seasonal farm work. This is where they encountered Americans holding block parties playing jazz, soul and R&B from speaker boxes. Jamaicans living in the ghettos of Kingston would have financially found it difficult to obtain new music or see any live gigs at the time. Due to the demand and the lack of live music, three gentlemen took the initiative to supply and play recorded music to parties and dance halls in downtown Kingston. Count Goody, Count Nicholas and Tom Wong. Tom Wong was a hardware store owner. He would take the music and the equipment to play music at block parties every Friday and Saturday. The crowd loved him, giving him his name.
And calling Tom, wow, you're a great man, and clapping him. So my friend just called him and said, you're a great man. I went to call the great Sebastian, and that name falls on him from that night.
This would become the start of a whole new subculture within the music world, beginning in Jamaica, thus bringing the community together. One day, Tom's car needed a tire change, and luckily a guy called Shine Shoes Vinny was there to help. For his assistance, Tom gave this gentleman the opportunity to become the selector, the specialist in choosing what tracks to play. His name was Vincent Forbes, also known as Duke Vin, as he would operate the first sound system in the UK. By the 50s, many more famous sound systems emerged in Kingston, such as Duke Reid's The Trojan, Cox and Dodd's Downbeat, and King Edward's Giant, each one competing to be the champion sound. In 1954, Duke Vin, along with Count Suckle, who was also a sound system operator and worked with Tom, stowed away and came to the UK, settling down in West London's Ladbroke Grove, north of Notting Hill. He found work as an engine cleaner. However, one thing he did realise: there was no block parties or places to go and dance. You have to keep in mind that during this time the black community were not considered as the same level or the status with middle class white communities. Pubs and job centres would have had signs stating no entry for blacks, Irish or dogs, and this was also included in the dance clubs.
I've heard that you've got rooms going. And
I haven't got a room, but I'm afraid I can't let you in.
Beg your pardon?
I can't let you in. I've got 14 English boys in here.
14 English boys? So you don't want...
I can't mix. I'm ever so sorry, I would myself, but if I let you come in, all my boys would leave.
If you let me come in...
If I let you come in, all the other ones would go.
Yes. Okay,
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
There was no place for black people to go. They wouldn't let us in club. They say you got to be a member, but there was no member for black people.
I look around and see what's up. I said, well, the country is dead. I want to sound nowhere to go. I said, this is not me, man.
So they decided to take matters into their own hands and do this themselves, starting with their own parties and houses and creating their own sound systems. These parties would have impacted bringing the Caribbean community together.
Wonderful, fun, man, it was fun. Crowd, pack. And then up there to name the Tickler, man. This is the Tickler, they call me the Tickler, man.
During that time in the 1950s, the first youth subculture movement after World War II emerged. The Teddy Boys, and the Teddy Girls known as Judies. Inspired by American rock and roll, fashion use of drain pipe trousers and the Edwardian frock coats known as dandies. Their image was slick. However, the Teddy Boys were the hard lads at the time. Gangs around London, such as the famous Teddy gang known as the Ploughboys from Clapham Common. Later in time, two more subcultures will emerge, the Rockers and the Mods. On the 24th of August 1958 in Nottingham went through an outbreak of violence known as the St. Anne's Race Riot. Accounts state that a mixed race couple was turned away from a pub on St. Anne's Well Road. This was thought to be the trigger, which led to a massive brawl out between Teddy Boys and West Indians. And a week later, on the 29th of August 1958, Notting Hill had its first race riot as well. Prior to this, there was an increase of violent attacks in the days before against the West Indian community. This riot was also thought to be triggered by an argument between a couple. The Teddy Boys started intervening, later fueling the outbreak between the Teddy Boys and the West Indians for the next couple of days, which sparked a whole community uprising. This would lead to tensions later on in the future.
Playing in 1958 in Lancaster Road and Silchester Road, when they start bombing the place with petrol bomb and say kill the nick, burn them, send them back home. That was the first racial thing. They set the house on fire, and the house was on fire. We only escaped because in those days they got attic.
This is Total Bags, also known as the Fortress. On the last night of the riots in 1958, the Teddy Boys were going around the area and they knew something was up because they couldn't see many black people on the street. And of course they came around here and they just, because this was a stronghold for black people in the area, they decided to torture 100 men in here, some of who'd been recruited from Brixton, Jamaican men. Suddenly all the windows opened and bottles and Molotov cocktails and anything they could find up there was rained down on the Teddy Boys.
When I look out and see from Kensington Park Road to Portobello Road was massive lot of people out there. And I distinctly hear when they say, let's burn the niggers, let's lynch the niggers. And from those spoken words, I say start bomb them. And then we you see the Molotov cocktail bombs coming out.
By the 60s, many more sound systems started to emerge, and playing in the house was just not enough anymore, as many people couldn't enter.
It couldn't play in the house no more, the ceilings were falling in. Yeah, some dancers would go and play. The ceiling cave in, because the bass was too... Now that I'm a big man now, I can see that the people who live upstairs and next door, they must have gone through hell Yeah, but at the time, we didn't have time to think about people. We had time to think about the dance, right? And enjoying ourselves.
And the local clubs were small as well. Duke Vin and Count Suckle had a major thing going on, and were luckily able to play at places like the Brixton Town Hall, Stoke Newington Town Hall, Birmingham, Nottingham, and all over the place. However, they needed a major nightclub residency to keep this going. In the early 60s, Count Suckle was a bouncer of a nightclub that would establish the turning point for sound systems and further push the music to the people. This club was called the Roaring Twenties, and it would turn out to be the hottest nightclub in London during the 60s. R&B was now starting to get known, and yet R&B was not being sold in London's record stores as it was always pop music. So therefore the R&B sound became exclusive to the nightclub. Bearing in mind the big names in the music scene was attending here, such as the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, and many others. It is believed that rhythm and blues was the influence on those artists and their sound. Now back in Jamaica, major changes would happen into the music. As we know, many soundmen were playing rhythm and blues. This pushed more musicians to experiment, thus influencing their sound, which would later create a new genre.
It became caught up in a frenzy and couldn't help moving to this pulsating, almost religious beat. This is ska.
Ska music was popular now in Jamaica. Since Jamaica's independence, the people wanted something that was theirs, a sense of pride, and this was with ska. At the same time, one young Englishman who was raised in Jamaica loved the music that was coming out of the island. He wanted to get involved in any way possible within music and bring this sound further to the UK and to the rest of the world. His name was Chris Blackwell, and he is the founder of one of the biggest labels in the world, Island Records. And following that will come the iconic Trojan Records.
So I really pushed the name ska, because in Jamaica it wasn't called blue beat. In Jamaica it was called ska, because it's a sort of onomatopoeic word for the guitar on the offbeat. So I really pushed the name ska.
Jamaican music was now getting popular in the UK, having artists coming to perform here, such as Prince Buster and Millie Small. Council estates were filled with English and Caribbean families, and this included the same in working class jobs. This integration of different cultures impacted on a subculture on the British youth, as the youth were integrated together between English and Jamaicans due to being working classes, yet both growing up in similar council environments. There was a desire for the working class youths to rebel against the system, against the British social conditions, and have a sense of direction. The first wave original skinheads. Rising from mod culture in Britain, the influence of fashion, a sense of style and music created the subculture. This subculture took in influences from Jamaican companions of the RUDEBOY style, and the rebellious yet controversial lyrics in their music.
This protest music, protest against injustice of people and all things, right? And they saw me as a rebel and identified themselves as such. So there was some compatibility there. I think so, because you should see them.
A great moment in time in the UK when finally working class white and black youth had come together on the dance floors during the 60s. Jamaican music here was growing, with Trojan Records pushing the ska sound here in the UK. Influences of vocal harmony, iconic repeated bass lines, and the more lyrics on love was now coming together, creating a more slow tempo yet chilled style called rocksteady, becoming the successor of ska.
to me twice. Your sugar and spice. Love me forever and I'll be true to you. You are an angel and you're so divine.
Everybody get ready. It's time to rock steady. It's ba-ba-boom time.
Now back in Jamaica after post-independence from Britain, Emperor Haile Selassie set foot on the island for the first time. Never before seen crowds of people waited for Haile Selassie at the airport. This was an indicator of how much of the Rastafari minority had increased compared to when the movement began in the 1930s.
Emperor of Ethiopia arrived. The crowd erupted into a frenzy of rejoicing as they broke through the lines of soldiers and police and surged out onto the tarmac, eager to engulf the emperor with their affection. At the foot of the cenotaph, His Imperial Majesty laid a wreath in memory of Jamaicans who gave their lives in both world wars.
Rastafarians faced discrimination. As it wasn't recognized as a religion in Jamaica, the Rasta's traditional appearance had separated them from society. There were unjust arrests, incarceration, and the ritual use of cannabis had kept them from getting jobs. Known as the holy herb, it was used in order to give you time for yourself, to meditate, and to achieve higher levels of consciousness. This oppression they had to deal with, called the downpression, because they believed that oppression bears down on people rather than lifting them up. Furthermore, Jamaica had been going through decades of political conflict between the right wing, the JLP, Jamaican Labour Party, and the left wing, the PNP, People's National Party, which caused an increase in political violence and urban warfare within Kingston. At the same time, the living conditions were awful and people were divided, struggling in harsh environments such as the iconic Jamaican slum, Trenchtown. Trenchtown was the home of many famous artists such as Alton Ellis, Peter Tosh, and the legendary Bob Marley. Rocksteady's love lyrics were declining in songs, and the subject matter within the songs were becoming more politically and socially concerning. Reggae music was born. More Rastafari expressions were being heard in the songs. Issues on crime by gangs known as the RUDEBOYs were running the areas of downtown Kingston. The lyrics on the struggle, poverty, and inequality touched the people of the Jamaican ghettos. They related to the music, thus leading to more artists expressing their grievances. Since the West Indians have been migrating here in the UK after World War II and working in jobs which required more physical labour or considered as jobs English people wouldn't want to do, the Caribbean community wanted to be accepted as part of British society and culture.
We wanted to be British, we wanted to be fit in and become a part of the society, but we found ourselves in a racialized environment, and this is where reggae came in. Reggae afforded us our own independent cultural identity.
Reggae music spoke to the people, not only for the Caribbean community, but to the general British working class. In the 1960s, skinheads were a young working class subculture that came from the mods and accepted the Jamaican culture, as both were usually from working classes. Living side by side, and both had a deep connection with reggae, ska and rocksteady music. And this was about to change.
This country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man.
Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech. This speech was the focus on the Race Relations Bill, which later that year in 1968 had become an Act of Parliament. The legislation made it illegal to refuse housing, employment and public services to people on the basis of race. And this would furthermore impact Britain's race relations. This was considered ironic because Enoch Powell was the Tories' health minister during the early 1960s. And he was the one who launched a campaign for recruiting trained doctors overseas. and invited women from the Caribbean to train as nurses in Britain to fill the labour shortages caused by the NHS expansion.
I said you made me cry.
Unfortunately, around the early 1970s, the current economic situation within the UK was starting to get worse. When Labour promised so much to the working class of the British population after the war, but yet was thought to have done so little, more issues start to arise, such as the increase of unemployment. Those who are worse off looked for a need and a reason to blame. The increase in crime, immigration and politicians were now being blamed for all of the country's problems.
Breaking up.
Do you want something on how many people have been mugged? Don't lay your hand on me, Miss Hunks, I'll break your fucking jaw. Yes, I am a racist, and why? Who's made me a racist? This government, the Conservatives, and every sturdy, stinking councillor who sticks up for the And I'll stand by my words, because I don't like these people, never will do.
Newspapers and many other media sources were pushing this to the British public. Even in television, comedy shows were pushing casual racial slurs.
I have to go because of Eddie. Don't mind you being here.
Bloody nignob! Don't want that lump of white muck at my party, right?
Eddie, blood is blood. There's no difference. Mine's the same as yours.
How can it be? Mine's civilized, yours is primitive.
A novel from 1970 by Richard Allen portrayed a London skinhead, character named Joe Hawkins, who was obsessed with football, alcohol, racism and violence, specifically violence against hippies, authorities and racial minorities. The popular media negatively impacted the skinhead image, therefore created a new legion of followers. This skinhead image has now earned a reputation of causing trouble in the streets and football terraces. Neo-East army groups began growing in the UK, and also the development of the National Front Party was established. This is when far-right politics meets youth subculture. They were recruiting skinheads, as most skinheads could relate to what they were fighting for, as they were of working class and of whom were on the dole or in low-paying jobs. During the late 70s, politics set the tone for the neo-Nazi army, and skinheads were mixed up in the ranks. The NF would have done marches within multicultural areas such as the known march in South London's Lewisham.
So listen to me while I say to you, breaking up is hard to do. Breaking up.
There was all skinheads come down from the next area, and they come smashing all these windows around here, pulling doors off the Indians. Just beating up any person inside, white or black.
As the coloured kids.
Fair play with them.
They're alright.
You know what I mean? They just come up looking for trouble all the time. It's them coming up for trouble, the big lads.
It's a certain number, in the gang that it's causing the trouble, Like, there's 3 or 4 in it, you could name them, but you can't, we won't. We know who they are, and they don't know who they are. And the gang's following them.
House, when we were all fighting, all the colours, we're throwing petrol bombs through the windows. One of the windows on the ground floor. Could they call us white trash?
Call us white trash. I mean, they're always calling us names. You've got to be calling them back.
Can you see that they might think that you're causing trouble with them?
No, they come down here causing trouble with us, so we're going to retaliate and not stand around like a gang of fools.
Furthermore, the black community was not the only ones that were subjects being targeted on. The Asian communities were targeted on as well.
Here in Brick Lane, the centre of the Bengali community in the East End, attacks on Asians have been common.
50 or 200 like these youths, all these skinheads. But no one is coming here. I break my teeth in here. There's the brick. No.
Nearly 3,000 people started the march from Brick Lane. Altogether, in Tar Hamlet alone, there were 6,000 to 8,000 Bengali people who did not go to work.
Frame of George Lindo up in Bradford town, but them Bradford blacks them a rally round. They say them frame of George Lindo up in Bradford town, but the Bradford blacks them a rally round. Maggie Thatcher and they go with a racist show, but a she have to go. Cause right now, African, Asian, West Indian and Black British stand firm in England. In a this year time, yeah. No matter what they say, come what may, we are here to stay in England. In a this year time, yeah.
The UK punk rock scene was emerging, bringing us big bands such as the Sex Pistols, The Damned, The Clash, and many more.
We're so pretty, oh so pretty. We're vacant, we're so pretty, oh so pretty.
Are you honest? Yes, I am, very. I think you're trying to shock people. I don't give a what you think. I know what I think, and that's all that counts to me. I don't try and impress anybody but myself.
Punk rock bands came from the 60s garage rock and roll. The do-it-yourself ethics and rebellious view on the British system attracted many young people rebelling against the system.
God save the Queen, the fascist regime, it made you a moron, potential hate bomb.
Due to this new wave, many middle-class art college types would have been attending these punk events at the time. And with that, many skinheads would have not had related to the scene as much, until Sham 69 entered the scene. Band's style allowed skinheads who were left outside of the punk scene to enter.
If you don't fucking enjoy yourself in this song, we're fucking off. This one's called Postal Breaker.
However, this allowed the NF to scout within the events. More right-wing skinheads turning up would have caused fights to break out within Sham shows.
People are really rather afraid that this country might be rather swamped by people with a different culture. That if there's any fear that it might be swamped, people are going to react and be rather hostile to those coming in. So if you want good race relations, you've got to allay people's fears on numbers. That's one thing that's driving some people to the National Front. But they say that at least they're talking about some of the problems.
With all these race relation problems happening within the UK, there was a need for something to happen. At this point, reggae music was everywhere, especially within the UK. The English market had become essential to the Jamaican producers, especially within the settled Caribbean communities.
That's what the people love. England is the gateway to real reggae music.
That was when I first learned that Feel Like Jumping was also a big song in England. We were just in Jamaica not knowing what was happening.
Roots reggae music and message could be felt and relayed by the British working classes of the Caribbean community, as well as other races because of the lyrics, inequality and social politics. Anti-right-wing protests were happening all over the UK, such as London, Birmingham, Manchester, and many other British towns and cities. People were protesting back.
When they kick at your front door, how you gonna come? With your hands on your head, on the trigger of your thumb. When the law break in, how you gonna go? Shot down on the pavement, or waiting in death row. You can crush us, you can bruise us, but you'll have to answer to
Not only were people coming together from different races, they were coming together in music. The city of Coventry gave us a new genre of British music called two-tone, taking influences of ska, reggae and punk rock.
Stop you messing around. Better think of your future.
Coventry was a home of the big two-tone bands such as the Specials and the Selector, thanks to the legendary Jerry Dammers. more two-tone and British ska bands emerged, and the crowds loved it. Unfortunately, even with all the positivity with the music that was coming out at the time, race issues will occur further, especially in the future, with the police throughout the 80s and 90s, and most will say it's still going on. However, we've got to focus on the positivity.
Pass the dutchie on the left hand side. Pass the dutchie on the left hand side. It a go bun. Give me the music, make me jump and fun. It a go done. Give me the music, make me jump and fun. It was a cool and lonely, breezy afternoon. How does it feel when you got no food?
More British reggae artists and bands emerged onto our scene, bringing the sound to the people, and some records reaching the UK charts.
I left my gate and went out for a walk. How does it feel when you got no food?
Cockney is not a language, it is only a slang, and was originated, so in England. The first place it was used was over East London. It was respect for the different style pronunciation. Cockney have names like Terry Arthur and Dubstep. We have names like Winston, Lloyd and Leroy. We ball out, yo, while Cockney say, oi. What Cockney call a Jacks, we call a Blue Boy.
However, it is important to keep in mind the struggle some British reggae artists had to go through, as some of them were considered less authentic than the Jamaican-born acts. However, can now and still are accepted as a big part of British musical history.
The things I do for you is more than any other man can do. I'll be your shelter. I'll shelter you from harm. I'll be your baby. Oh yeah, just say the word. I'll be your comfort girl. Just let me be heard.
We must also remember the radio pushing the reggae sound to the masses at the time during the 70s and 80s. Steve Barnard's was the first black DJ on mainstream radio to bring the Caribbean sounds with reggae time, further giving us legendary radio presenters such as Tony Williams and Sir David Rodigan, who both play a big part in the broadcasting of Jamaican music on Radio London, with their time slot called Reggae Rockers.
And Patricia wants Louis to know that she loves him very much, and a happy belated Valentine. And Floyd of Hackney wants a record for his girlfriend, Faith. Okay, one's coming up, just for you.
DBC is based in an ordinary suburban house in northwest London. It's the first black pirate radio station in Britain, and until recently it bombarded the capital every Sunday afternoon with a wide variety of black music.
We're told it's a free country, free speech all the time. You can't do free speech. It hurts, you know. They say it's free speech, you try and set up a station and talk to somebody, they'll come and shut you down, you know.
At the factory, we'll be rocking and swing to Java High Power.
Sir Rodigan is still bringing the sound to this day on radio and at major events.
And let me tell you why. In 35 years in this business, I shouldn't talk about Jamaica. Are you mad? This thing started in Jamaica. Some of your parents came from Jamaica.
And we must not forget to thank the local British DJs from the 80s onwards that were bringing the sounds of Jamaica from all over the UK to their communities.
Give me everything that a man desire.
Lead the board.
And thanks to the documentarians and researchers highlighting the social aspects that occurred to the Black Caribbean community and the English working classes during the 60s, 70s and onwards. The Jamaican and overall Caribbean connection carries onwards in British music throughout the 90s till now, such as influencing the acid raves in the late 80s. Scenes of the setting up of sound systems in the abandoned warehouses and fields, bringing everyone together, bringing love and unity. To the sounds of UK jungle, incorporating the Jamaican bass lines of dub and reggae, with Jamaican toasted, the rhyming over rhythms and hyping up the crowds. The evolution and influence of the sound continues further on in future British underground genres. The Jamaican influence is not only within England, but also in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland.
It's a fear that shakes my body, and I don't understand, so I'm leaving. This time I played it smart.
Furthermore, British artists who are fusing the Jamaican sounds of reggae, ska with punk and two-tone backgrounds are still playing events to this day, here in the UK and around the world.
If the truth be told, I'm a sucker for the high grade. If the truth be told, when I'm grey and old, will I still be getting involved? I hope so. If the truth be told, I'm a sucker for the high grade. If the truth be told, when I'm grey and old, will I still be getting involved?
We got really interested in, almost geeky about where like this same music like Real Big Fish and Cap Down, stuff like that, where that music had actually come from and what it had developed from, and at its very heart and core was way back with Jamaican music and a lot of the stuff that now I think we can describe our music as.
On the other hand, we must not also forget the UK's original Skinners from the 60s, the Skinners that grew up alongside their Caribbean neighbours. Before the far-right groups adopted the image, before the racism, the time when the original Skinheads went through similar struggles all working class families went through, and the love and exposure of ska and rocksteady music was brought to them by the legendary Trojan records. The skinhead subculture is not as prominent as it was in the previous generations. However, there is a big event which is held here in the UK called the Great Skinhead Reunion in Brighton. Bringing together skinheads from the old and new generations of skins from across the UK.
I stand for being with my mates and having a good time and listening to some good music. The skinhead meat is getting bigger every year, to the point of the media showcasing its influences on the new generations. So is the fashion styles. Little did we ever know that the skinhead belief against racial prejudice and the rude boy and girl fashion style had impacted people from all around the world. It is amazing to see the pride they have on our subculture. Within British film culture, the cult classic by Shane Meadows called This Is England portrays the life of working class youth in the Midlands and showcases love, friendship and their subculture of being young skinheads.
Nice area, mate.
Cheers for today. It's been the best day of my life.
Oh, fella, man, you are more than welcome, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, anytime.
However, the film also depicts what happens when the skinhead culture is adopted by white supremacists, causing division within their group.
Hey, go on, fuck off! Fuck off!
The film is also a reflection of the unfortunate harsh reality of race issues people had to deal with within England at the time, due to the rise of racism and nationalistic politics.
Keep your fucking hands off him now! That fucking kid's dad died for this fucking country.
The rawness, nostalgia and bitter reality of the 80s during the Thatcher reign is depicted in this movie, and with that has given the opportunity in winning a BAFTA award for Best British Film.
This is England.
This Is England was followed by a miniseries in the years of 86, 88 and 1990. I truly recommend giving it a watch because of the character development, the story and acting is brilliant. One of my favourite British dramas.
Oh no!
Within documentaries, Duke Vin and the Birth of S.H.A.R.P, directed by Gus Berger, documents the story of Vincent Forbes and his arrival to the UK, explaining the issues he had to deal with at the time.
I couldn't find a way to go for a dance, so I started my own sound system in 1955. I made the first sound system in the country.
It also includes personal accounts from big names such as Count Suckle.
That club was the best. I got a good time. Good life.
Daddy Vigo.
I'm dealing with reggae music at the People's Sound record shop.
Don Letts and Jerry Dammers. I recommend this documentary as there are not many sources out there regarding any educational representation on Duke Vin's history and his importance in creating the first sound system in the UK.
The music, man, them love it's the music I'm loving.
Please give this documentary a watch for a more in-depth insight of the times and the importance of British and Jamaican musical history.
The sound system, you gotta please the people, man. For the people to enjoy what you're playing. And that's what I do.
Overall, the Jamaican and Caribbean connection from the 60s onwards have been a big part of British culture, and this is evident within the series. Across the UK, we have many carnivals celebrating Caribbean culture, such as Birmingham Carnival, Leeds Carnival, St. Paul's and many others. Thus not forgetting the biggest one, Notting Hill Carnival, which is Europe's largest street festival, attracting over 1 million attendees. This big carnival was all started by some important people, such as the Trinidadian musicians, a community activist named Ronnie Laslett, and to the woman who planted the carnival seed by starting them as indoor events was by a Trinidadian called Claudia Jones in the 1950s. It is important to take into account of the past and learn from it. People could say history is repeating itself right now here in the UK. Especially with the current economic situation, the gentrification and immigration issues.
Despite colonisation, 25,000 Caribbeans served in the First World War and Second World War alongside British troops. How many have been detained as prisoners in their own country? Can she tell the House how many have been denied health under the National Health Service? How many have denied pensions? How many have lost their job? This is a day of national shame, and it has come about because of a hostile environment policy that was begun under her Prime Minister.
And it's understandable why this affects people, as there is no certainty for our future, positive or negative. However, there is one thing we do know. Music from Jamaica and the Caribbean has inspired and united people together, black and white. It's a part of our history, and is a big part of our UK sound. Next up in part 2 of episode 5, continuing on with the Jamaican connection and the musical journey towards dubstep, we take a look back at Jamaica with King Tubby and the impact of dub music, Bob Marley's connection to the UK, the big players of our British sound systems, UK sound clashes, and their influence on our UK-based culture.
La 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 dee, la la la.
my brethren.